So let's talk about my last 2 days of training in the classroom at JB Hunt. It was interesting. Um, my second to last day, my it was Friday, but technically it was my Thursday. I went in early as always, and we basically were told to go to the lounge, and we start. And officially, it was supposed to start at 8 a.m., but it didn't finish. It didn't actually go until we didn't actually start until 10 a.m. Now, what did we start? What was called close, what is it called? Close quarters training. Now, what this basically is an obstacle course setup. And it consists of they start with the truck connected up to a chassis with a container on top of it. And in the yard, you have enough room to pull forward. But what they did is they put some cones about 5 or 6 feet in front of it. So that way you have to pull and make a very sharp right turn. But don't straighten up just yet, because you got to make a really sharp right turn. And then you have to make a sharp left turn to go into a line of cones. So if you make the turn too shallow, then you won't be able to make it in there, because you got to go hard right and then hard left to straighten up and get back in there. From there, you come to a stop at the end. They go over what they want you to pre-trip on the trailer. They say your trainer will go over that more in depth with you later, but they want to at least show it to you there. From there, you jump in the truck and you make a sharp left turn. It wasn't all that sharp, and then you go around the yard and you come back and you line up inside of these cones and you come to a stop. Now, they tell you this is a sharp right turn, and it's about like this. You basically, actually I should do it towards camera. It's about this kind of angle. So you pull up and you go. But the cones are set up in the as sharp as they want you to go with it. And there's also a cone on the inside part. So if you cut it and you snug right around those cones, you'll be able to miss this one barely. Here's the catcher, though. Here's the catch, though. They say once you start driving, once you pull out from behind, the stop position, after you have your instructions, you know how to make your right turn. They don't want you to stop. They say we will stop you if you start to hit something, and it looks like there's going to be damage or something like that, like a cone. We'll move a cone or something like that. And so I was like, okay, fair enough. And I'm like, this is a right turn. This isn't going to be a big deal, because one of the things I got very good at when I was on the Martin Walmart account is you would have to make some really tight turns to get into some of these neighborhood markets, and you would have to make some really sharp turns and then position yourself to go between crates or, all kinds of things, pallets mainly, not crates. But I got this down, except for the fact that a Freightliner Cascadia turns totally different from a Kenworth T680. So I go and I line up, and then right at the point where I'm starting to make my turn, I'm like, oh no, the wheel stopped. I need to go over to here with the Kenworth T680. You have about one half extra turn. And so I come to a stop. I'm like, I'm at the edge. So my window's down. I yell out to the lady. I'm like, I'm not used to the way this truck turns. I'm like, I'm out of steering. I said, I'm used to a Kenworth. And she's like, that's fine. Just keep going. And I'm looking at this thing, and I'm like, I can't stop. They told me not to stop, once you go. And I'm like, I'm going to hit 2 cones. And she's like, oh, so that's okay. Just keep going. So I pull up, and the edge of the truck starts to hit a cone. And so they say, stop. And they move that cone. And then I pull up forward, and they say, stop. They move one more cone. And by then I have it. When I know what the steering limitations are, I can do it. Anyway, so at this point, I was like, all right, whatever. I just kind of had a big old grin on my face, and I'm shaking my head. And so when I came back around, because this time you go back around the same way you did before, but instead of going to the right and setting up for their hard right turn, you go to the left of the cones, and you get ready because they stop you. And then once the coast is clear, you set up for an alley dock, and it could not have been set up any easier. You have your parking spot here, right? And normally you would have a trailer that's fairly centered in it, right? Like just let me see if I can do this in such a way. All right, so here's the space. Normally you would have plenty of room. You'd have like two feet on either side if it's centered, right? Except for the fact that the trailer in this spot was actually moved over a little bit more. And in this spot, it was moved over a little bit more. You're going to be doing your alley dock in this way, right? So this one was actually back more so than the other one. So as you back in, it could not have been set up any easier. It's literally, one extra foot over on the two containers on either side. And so that way, as opposed to just having your 12-foot space and maybe 2 feet over on either side for wiggle room, a total of 16 feet to get in your 8.5 foot wide trailer, which is fine. Instead, they gave you like an extra foot on either side. And then with the positioning of the trailers, the one that's on the close side was farther back and the one that's on the far side was closer forward. It could not have been set up more friendly. Now, here's what's weird is I looked at this, and when I heard them calling this close quarters, I was thinking this is all going to be like tight backs and that kind of stuff, and it's going to be really tough for me. Because remember, when I first started CDL school, the alley dock was one thing I could not get down. I got much better at it over the years. When I was with Schneider and on the pods account, you didn't do much backing in that. I did quite a bit of backing with Martin, like every single day. But if I didn't have to do a precision back, I wouldn't. If I could go into one of like 3 or 4 or 5 spaces, I'd just go into the closest one and back up. It was fine. But I've gotten much better over the course of my past year of driving and a little bit more. So I felt confident. A lot of people have performance anxiety and they will have issues with when eyes are on you, because what they want you to do is pull up, come to a stop before you do any backing and walk around the entire trailer one time. And look at everything. And then get back in the trailer, pop the horn, and back up. Popping the horn is the one thing that I forgot, because I remember Schneider made us do that, but Martin didn't care. And, so it's something I have to teach myself to do again. So anyway, the one person, there was 2 people that went first. They were both in my first class, the class I did on my Monday, which was Tuesday. They were both part of that class. And 2 different guys went. And after the very first guy went, I had been looking at it. I'm like, close quarters. I'm like, do you do a lot of backs that are in close quarters like that? And people were like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, because I was like, close quarters, and backing where you have to like practically pivot around and then fit it in there and then take the bend out. Those are tight. I've done some of those before and they're not fun. They require forward, backward. The one I did when I was in my first like 2 weeks, my first time out, and I had only been driving for like 2 weeks at the time, because I basically was sent, as a refresher, in case you're not familiar with this channel, I started my very first thing that they put me in is Schneider put me in a rental car to go to just on the other side of Mobile, Alabama, to pick up my truck. And so I picked up the truck. Very first load they had me pick up was a trailer that was going to a place and dump off like 960 Goodyear tires. From there, I took that empty the next day and brought it back to Atlanta. So when I got to Atlanta, I traded on that empty for my flatbed. The very first load they sent me was out to the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So I did 3 different places out there. I picked up and brought back to Atlanta. From there, they sent me all the way up to Washington, like the Seattle, Washington area. I dropped off there. And then they sent me down to pick up in like the Portland, Oregon area. Clackamas or something like that was what it was called. I remember it was almost Christmas. And then from there, they sent me down to Santa Maria and Paris, California, if memory serves. When I got to Washington and went down, that was on my way there was when I stopped in Gillette, Wyoming for my very first reset. So I basically went I went to Texas and back. And then I went up and over and I had to stop in Gillette, Wyoming because I was out of hours. I had to reset there. And then from there, I went on. The next day, I made it to the very edge of Idaho, like but still in Montana, which is Halpag, something like that, Montana. And then the next day I went to Seattle. And then when I stopped for that next day was at this one place where it was the tightest. I didn't set up properly. A lot of backing is in the setup. I didn't set up properly because it wasn't something that I was overly confident with. But anyway, I set up and I was all over the place and trying to take the bend out, going forward, backwards, like an inch or two at a time. And luckily, there was a skilled driver that had a big old grin on his face. He saw that I was struggling, and so he stood back there and he was just like, come on back, stop, And then at one point, because the two trucks on either side of me were centered up like that, I was having problems, and I needed to be able to take the bend out of the tractor, and I couldn't because all I was able to do is go forward, backward with the tractors in front of me. So what he did is he talked to the driver, and he had them just pull his nose over, and that gave me enough room to be able to actually finish my swing and get in there. And I was like, "Thank you so much." And I was like, "Thank you so much." As the new driver, and he just kind of smiled and nodded, and he was out of there. He didn't say a word. Anyway, I think the other driver who pulled over so I could get in there. That was very early. Anyway, so that was that was a year ago and change. But that was the tightest spot I can remember actually backing into when it was tight. The worst parking lot was in Texas near the end of my OTR career with Schneider. I stopped. I was on my way up towards like from Houston or something like that. I took some back roads and I stopped at this one Pilot Flying J that was headed up towards wherever it was. And the lot where you parked was over to the side. As a matter of fact, on this channel, if you look at, and I have a standalone video that's like 2 minutes long. It's called "Getting Out of a Tight Spot," getting out of a tight parking spot or something like that. It's 5 different cameras. It's the front facing that I use, which was a time lapse. That's why it's a strobe. And then I have an Insta360 X3 in the back, which splits everything into that camera, forward toward the containers, and rear. So you can see all 5 of those. Anyway, though, that spot, there was, I mean, they should be ashamed of themselves for making a lot that tight. And I say that because when you get a lot of the people that were there were hauling cattle and stuff like that with their split tandems, and they couldn't back all the way up. So their nose stuck out like 6-8 feet. So people can't back properly. And the guy next to me, he was having such a hard time backing that he wasn't even driving. He had someone else, I guess, back for him. And he and like 3 other guys were standing at the side trying to motion him, and they would stop him if he started to hit something. I had actually gone to sleep because I left early in the morning, and I had gone to sleep, and all of a sudden I wake up because I'm hearing this truck next to me, and I think I get hit. And I look outside and I see some people standing out there, and I walk over. I jump in the driver's side seat and I look out there, and there's a driver out there, a really nice guy, who apparently he saw that the guy was about to back right into my mirror. So he shoved it forward, not backwards. Like with the tractor, not this way. He pushed it forward. That way, that as the guy was trying to back in here, he wasn't going to hit that. If I remember, I will make a point to post I might post the video, or I might just post my reaction of me getting really, really frustrated at the driver who was backing in, because I was not a happy camper. If I remember, I'll post that sometime after this video airs, or remind me by writing in the comments below, and I'll see if I can find the video. Because when I saw what was going on, I threw my Insta360 X3 over there. So I don't know if I'll make it a 360 video, or if I'll just put it on me or whatever, because I was complaining. I was like, you can't do that. You're not going to fit. And eventually he did. All it took was like half an hour of occupying all the space there and having like 5 people help him. He got in there. Oh, and another thing that happened is there was a TMC flatbed in front where he was trying to swing around. He never would have made it if that TMC guy who on a spread axle flatbed, if he didn't back up put his entire rear axle up on the grass. He literally backed up because he saw the guy nosing in. He was literally going an inch at a time. He was like, as soon as the pull started going forward on the tractor, it would like put on the brakes, and then he would try to turn the wheel, and then he would try backing up. And that he would not have been able to do it if that TMC driver wasn't a trooper and backed his spread axle where the rear tires were up and over on the grass. Anyway, so anyway, let me continue this before I get more sidetracked. So I set up for the alley dock, and I was actually concerned. I asked a couple of people, "Are you used to doing like really, really tight backs?" And they're like, "Yeah." I was like, okay, well, I was concerned about it. but apparently I set up and I thought I set up too far. Like, you know how you can pull up like the parking spaces here, and if you do this number and you start to do this, your trailer is supposed to be lined up over here. But I was about like this, and some people went way over. Anyway, I thought I was a little too far away, so I started to back up. I forgot to hold the horn. And I start to back up, and I start to kind of go straight. And then as I start to get, I start, cranking it. And then as I cranked it, I like the angle. I was like, the angle is just going perfectly there. So I just kind of held the angle and just followed it. And the trailer literally went straight in. And then I was like, well, straighten it up. And I went perfectly centered between the two lines. And it required no pull-ups. It was perfectly centered, like the two lines, and the trailer was in the middle of it, and it went straight back. And I straightened things up. I'm like, wow, that was perfect. I don't think I could have ever done that any better. Very seldomly have I actually been able to do that. Normally, I'll get it most of the way in there, and I might have to pull forward just to straighten it up. Sometimes I can get it all the way in there, but I'm a little crooked, and then I'll pull forward to straighten up. But this one was perfectly centered in between the two lines. And then I didn't need to pull up. He blew his whistle, so I'd stop. And then I was like, did I hit something? He's like, no. That's as far back as you need to take it. I'm like, okay. And they were giving constructive criticism on people. He said, I have nothing to say. Maximum. He's like, you did it perfect. I can't say anything. You did it perfect. I'm like, awesome. First time I think I've ever been told by an instructor, I got an alley dog perfect. That was awesome. Anyway, so we were supposed to do the whole entire thing twice, but because there were 20 people that started in training this week, it took all morning. The rest of the morning, we started out there at about 10, and we went to lunch at about 1:30. And then they said, go ahead and call it and go back there around 2:30. But we were all going back there closer to 2, but the instructor showed up. And we went out there and we got through the rest of everybody by 4:00, with exception of like 2 students who were still in their first round. And then I was like, okay, well, we're not going to go again. So I had 2 points off for the 2 cones I hit going forward, and then no other points off. So booyah, win. Then the next day I was told I'm going to be put with a trainer who's going to take me on my tour of the rail yards. Well, I showed up early. She told me to show up at 7. I showed up, and she's like, and this was on a Saturday, so there was no traffic. And she said, today's my day off. We're going to go to the rail yards and stuff this week. So what I'll do is I'll show you where the Forest Park JB Hunt location is, and I'll show you the Palmetto rail yard, and then the other 2 rail yards and Lithia Springs terminal I'll show you next week, or when we reconvene and we do our training. And I'm like, oh, you're gonna be my trainer? She's like, yeah. So I was like, all right, cool. Has a little bit of a twisted sense of humor, which I like. And we got along fine. So we basically went to the yard, quick tour, went to a drop yard that was at the yard, and then we went by the Forest Park terminal, and then we were done by like 9:30 a.m. That was it. And then after that, I went to the hotel, and then I said, you know what? I'm off tomorrow, because I double checked it by the office. I was off that day, and then I was going to be starting the following day. I didn't know initially if I was going to be starting on my official schedule, which is Sunday through Thursday, or if I was going to be, with somebody who was going to have a different schedule. And that's the case. I was with somebody whose schedule starts on Monday. She had a ride along to do with another person on Sunday who when he answered the phone, she told me, she said, I called him right after I called you. You confirmed with me and you sounded fine, but he sounded, And she says, I give him a 50-50 chance of not showing up. He didn't show up. Why would you go through a week of training if you're not going to even do it? Anyway, I mean, if you have second thoughts about the account or what we're doing or whatever, then tell the manager and don't even bother wasting people's time. So anyway, being that I had the rest of that day and the day off the following, then I was like, okay, well, I don't need to, hang around. So I grabbed my stuff from the hotel room, and I told the person there that I will be back. Even so, it looks like I moved out of the room, but I will be back. And It's funny because when I was with the trainer says, I like to start early, but so like 6 a.m. And I said, well, I plan to start at midnight when I start my shift. And she said, well, no one ever wants to start before like 6 a.m. And I said, well, I'll start at midnight if you want to. And she said, well, we're not allowed to start before 4 a.m. I'm like, well, fine, it's 4 a.m. if you want. So I was happy with that. And so she's like, okay, 4 a.m. it is. She likes starting early. And so as we were walking back towards her truck, and we were talking from the truck to the terminal. After she parked, she was like, bragging. She's like, and I'm going to be with him next week. He seems to have a pretty good attitude. You better not be listening to this. And I'm just like, and she's like, he seems to have a pretty good attitude, and he wants to start at 4 a.m. So she's like, he gets us. We get to start early, and the other instructors were like, that's good. She said that most of the time people don't want to start before like 6 or 7 a.m. and they make complaints. Why would you want to do that in rush hour traffic in Atlanta? Why? That's stupid. I mean, I love being in rush hour traffic. Furthermore, I would love to finish my day in rush hour traffic. I mean, come on. All you're doing is you're like nervous, traffic's all over the place, you're watching your clock and whatever. It's fine maybe while you're out with an instructor and the instructor can jump in the seat and, drive while you jump on duty, and you use your on duty time that way. But still, you got to be smart with your hours. Anyway, so that's the end of my classroom style training with JB Hunt. I will have this upcoming week, I will be going out with my instructor 2 to 3 days. I will see exactly what that entails later this, by the time we get back into everything. I know that I'm meeting at 4 a.m. And aside from that, I'm not 100% sure what we're doing, what loads we're going to get and that kind of thing, but it's going to be cool. Wearing my JB Hunt hat, I got to break it in. My Martin hat, I had broken it in nicely. So I think I have a little bit of a red spot right up there from where the hat kind of sits on me weird, but we'll get used to it in time. We'll break in this hat too. So far, I like JB Hunt. I like the people. The rail yard, all the stops for the trains and stuff like that are interesting. I don't like stopping, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. The rail yard seems pretty intimidating right now because there's just so much going on. There's trains, there's lots, it's very tight and stuff. So I just want to make sure I can follow along well enough. But that's pretty much it. Training will start up soon, and that will be that. But for right now, classroom training is over. So now I'm being kicked out of the nest and into a truck with an instructor. And we're going to be like daily out on assignment and then back in every day. So there you go. That's it for right now. Thanks for watching.